Pope Leo XIV, just days into the job, laying out his vision of the challenges facing the Church and the world.
On May 8, 2025, history was made in the Roman Catholic Church as Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost was elected the 267th Pope, taking the name Pope Leo XIV. His election marks several firsts: the first American-born Pope, the first from the Order of Saint Augustine, and the first pontiff with dual citizenship in the United States and Peru. So, who is Robert Prevost? Born on September 14, 1955, in Chicago, Illinois, Robert Francis Prevost was the son of Louis Marius Prevost, a man of French-Canadian descent, and Mildred Martinez, who brought Spanish and Italian roots into the family. Growing up in a vibrant, multicultural household, young Robert was immersed in several languages, traditions, and faith expressions. This richly diverse background would come to shape his global outlook and deep sensitivity to cultural and spiritual diversity, qualities that would later define his ecclesiastical leadership. From an early age, Prevost showed a natural curiosity for the world around him. His parents, both devout Catholics, nurtured in him a strong sense of faith and a love for learning. At a time when most children were preoccupied with ordinary pastimes, Robert found himself drawn toward the Church. His early schooling took place at the minor seminary of the Augustinian Fathers, a formative environment where he not only received a rigorous academic foundation, but also began to discern a deeper calling to religious life. Eager to explore both the intellectual and spiritual dimensions of his faith, Prevost went on to study at Villanova University, a renowned Augustinian institution. There, he pursued a degree in mathematics, a discipline that reflected his analytical mind and structured way of thinking, while also delving into philosophy, which opened him to the rich traditions of Christian thought and ethics. The balance between logic and contemplation became a hallmark of his character. In 1978, at the age of 23, Prevost took a life-changing step by officially joining the Order of Saint Augustine. It was not merely a decision to become a priest, it was a declaration of a lifelong devotion to service, humility, and the pursuit of truth through community. His entry into the order marked the beginning of a spiritual journey that would take him across continents, cultures, and eventually into the heart of the Vatican itself. Driven by a deep sense of purpose and a desire to live out his faith in service to others, Robert Prevost's missionary journey led him to Peru in the mid-1980s, a country grappling with social inequality, poverty, and political unrest. Rather than remain in the relative comfort of academic or administrative posts in the United States, Prevost chose a more challenging path: to walk alongside the poor and marginalized in Latin America, embodying the Augustinian values of community, humility, and pastoral care. In Peru, Prevost immersed himself in local communities, learning Spanish fluently and adapting to the unique cultural, spiritual, and social realities of the region. He began his service as a parish pastor, where he gained the trust and affection of parishioners through his humility, warmth, and accessibility. He wasn't content simply to preach from the pulpit. He visited families, shared in their struggles, and often worked to improve local conditions. He also taught in seminaries, forming a new generation of clergy who admired his intellectual depth and down-to-earth spirituality. His dedication extended beyond the church walls as he took on roles as a diocesan official, helping to organize ministries and address systemic challenges within the local church. His leadership skills and pastoral commitment did not go unnoticed. In 2001, Prevost was elected Prior General of the Order of Saint Augustine, the highest office within the Augustinian community, headquartered in Rome. Over the course of his 12-year tenure, he visited Augustinian communities across the world, guided global strategic initiatives, and worked to strengthen the Order's presence in regions as diverse as Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He led with a blend of administrative precision and pastoral sensitivity, often emphasizing the importance of listening to the voices of the marginalized and the need for religious life to adapt meaningfully to modern challenges. After stepping down in 2013, Prevost returned to Peru, not as a visitor or foreign missionary, but as someone whom the people now called their own. In 2015, Pope Francis appointed him Bishop of Chiclayo, a city on Peru's northern coast. His return was met with enthusiasm and deep respect. By then, He had become something of a spiritual bridge between the North and South, and his bicultural identity earned him a nickname in Vatican circles, the Latin Yankee. The title was affectionate and telling. It captured his American roots and his Latin American heart, a duality that uniquely positioned him to serve the global church in an increasingly interconnected world. In 2023, Robert Prevost's long-standing service, theological depth, and administrative expertise were recognized at the highest levels of the Catholic Church when Pope Francis appointed him as prefect of the dicastery for bishops, one of the most influential positions within the Roman Curia. This role entrusted him with overseeing the selection and evaluation of bishops across the globe, a responsibility that called not only for discernment and doctrinal clarity, but also for an acute understanding of pastoral realities in diverse cultural contexts. At the same time, he was named president of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America, reinforcing his reputation as a leading voice for the global South within the Vatican. These appointments marked a pivotal moment in Prevost's ecclesiastical journey. Though he had always served with quiet determination rather than seeking prominence, he now stood at the heart of the Church's governance. His experience in both the northern and southern hemispheres made him uniquely suited to guide episcopal appointments with balance and insight. In a church often marked by tensions between progressives and traditionalists, Prevost's centrist approach earned him the respect of both camps. He was known for championing social justice, advocating for the poor, migrants, and the marginalized, values aligned with Pope Francis's vision, yet he remained deeply committed to doctrinal integrity and the spiritual depth of Catholic tradition. Soon after assuming these roles, he was elevated to the College of Cardinals, a clear sign that his leadership was not only administrative, but also spiritual and visionary. His inclusion among the Pope's closest advisors placed him firmly in the line of succession and hinted at the trust placed in him by those seeking continuity and renewal. When Pope Francis either passed or stepped aside, depending on the timeline, the College of Cardinals convened in conclave to elect his successor. To the surprise of some outside observers, but not to those familiar with the currents within the Church, Cardinal Prevost emerged as a clear favorite. His ability to listen deeply, bridge divides, and lead with both conviction and compassion made him a consensus candidate in an institution often fractured along ideological lines. The swiftness of the conclave, which concluded in just a few ballots, reflected an unusual level of unity, a clear signal that the Church's leadership sought a pope who could continue the reforming spirit of Francis while bringing a new voice to global Catholicism. On that historic day in May 2025, as white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel and the words "Habemus Papam" rang out from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost was introduced to the world as Pope Leo XIV. A deliberate and symbolic gesture that paid homage to Pope Leo XIII, one of the most influential leaders of the modern papacy. Pope Leo XIII, remembered especially for his 1891 encyclical Rerum Novarum, had laid the foundation for modern Catholic social teaching by defending workers' rights, the dignity of labor, and the Church's role in promoting justice in the face of industrial capitalism. By taking his name, Pope Leo XIV signaled a desire to continue in that tradition, to be a pope of the people, attentive to economic inequality, social fragmentation, and the moral demands of justice in a rapidly changing world. In his first public address from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, Leo XIV struck a tone of humility, warmth, and resolve. Speaking in multiple languages, including Italian, Spanish, English, and Latin, he greeted the faithful around the world, not as a distant monarch, but as a fellow pilgrim on the path of faith. He spoke of a church that must be a home for all, not a fortress for the few, and emphasized three core values that would define his pontificate: peace, dialogue, and inclusivity. His words resonated across continents, particularly in areas marked by division, violence, and exclusion. While Leo XIV shared many of Pope Francis's progressive values, including concern for the environment, attention to the poor, and outreach to the peripheries, observers noted a more measured tone in his early remarks on doctrinal and liturgical matters. He expressed a commitment to upholding church tradition, while also recognizing the need for prudent reform. In these early days of his pontificate, Pope Leo XIV stands not only as the first American pope, but as a symbol of the global church's evolving identity, rooted in tradition, yet open to the needs and hopes of the present age. The world watches with anticipation as he begins to chart a course for a church that must both comfort the suffering and challenge the powerful, bearing witness to the gospel in a time of uncertainty and change. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more informative uploads.